So it turns out that after all these years, I'm not the developer of Billy's Nightmare. Yeah, I know. I was just as surprised as you when I first found out.
But wait, Jonas.
What are you talking about, man?
Well, grab your pyjamas, come closer, and let me tell you the story about how someone claimed that Billy's Nightmare wasn't made by me and my friend. It all started about a month ago. I was sitting at my computer, refreshing the browser as usual, waiting for fan mail to magically appear on our game page. When suddenly...
You've got mail.
But it turned out to be anything but fan mail. It was in fact a pretty well written, although very bizarre, comment from a guy who claimed that Billy's Nightmare wasn't made by us.
The guy told me that he is a principal software engineer from the Philippines, and he just found out that his son's game is under my name. He said that his son, who is a 12-year-old homeschooler, is the real developer, designer, and artist of this game. And now the son is very disheartened because he is not even the admin of his own game. So the father now wants us to recognize his son as the true developer of Billy's Nightmare.
Wow, that's a pretty bold claim.
At first I was going to give him a long reply, telling him how stupid he sounds. But since I'm such a nice person, I just decided to delete the comment instead. This apparently didn't sit well with the father, who then went on to make 5 more comments on our game page, another one on YouTube, and he even reported our game on itch.io. Like Jesus.
Daddy, chill.
So, let's take a look at his arguments and see how convincing he really is.
First of all, that name, Itchy Worm, sounds like one of those worms that lives where worms aren't supposed to be. And that's basically what all his comments are starting to feel like to me. Not only does the father claim that the game is made by his 12-year-old son, he also says that I have been helping the boy with making the game page on itch, and that I have been making all these devlogs to promote his game. The father then wants me and my friend to stop claiming that this is our game, and that we should have the decency to admit that we are not the developers. He then finishes with some kind of threat, by saying that this game will be our nightmare.
Which sounds like a bad 80s action movie punchline.
Like,
Hey, developers of Billy's Nightmare. This game will be your nightmare.
and I guess that being 80s punchline by a grown man from the Philippines is where I draw the line. So I used my ban hammer and removed him from our channel. And that's when he started commenting on my YouTube channel and reporting us on itch. Well, Dad, now that we have read your angry comments, let me introduce you to something called evidence. Because, believe me, there's evidence everywhere.
So, let's grab our detective hats and see what we can find.
Well, first of all, this guy is so lost that he can't even get his own facts straight. Because he first says that his son has been working on the game since July 2020, but in a later message he says that I've been stealing ideas and characters since February 2020. Well, then how come that I have devlogs going back as far as April 2019? And if we take a look at the sprite for Billy himself, we can go even further back in time. As you can see here, this was created in May 2018, almost 2 whole years before his son allegedly started working on the game.
So, evidence-wise, we're off to a pretty good start.
He also says that the multiplayer server is under my name. Well, joke's on you, Dad from the Philippines, because we don't even have a multiplayer server for the game. And who the hell is James Broman? My name is Jonas. You know, one of the developers whose name is actually in the game itself. So your son doesn't seem very bright if he puts other people's names in his game.
But all jokes aside, he is probably not an angry dad from the Philippines.
He is probably just some fat guy, living in his mother's basement, who gets a thrill out of pranking game developers on itch.io. But, who knows, I could be wrong. So, we'll see if this was the last we'll hear from the angry dad from the Philippines.
So, with that crazy guy out of the way, let's take a look at some new enemies that we have added.
To be honest, it's probably 2 of the worst enemies that we have ever added to this game. And that's why we actually decided to remove them, and later replace them with 2 other enemies requested by you guys. So let's take a look at the first enemy that we have added and replaced. Just like the football player on the school level and the Black Knight on the movie studio level, we knew that we needed some kind of charging enemy for the bedroom floor level. I'm not exactly sure why, but we finally decided to add one of those spinning things they have in Inception. Our idea was that it could spin faster and faster and then charge towards the player at high speed. Since the spinner has such a basic shape with no cool animations, it looked a bit boring. So we at least gave it some different colors to sell the effect that it's spinning around. But it still felt a bit rigid and boring. So we used code to make it rotate slightly, in an effort to make it look a bit more interesting. While idle, it rotates slightly to the left and right. It rotates towards the player when attacking, and away from the player when taking damage.
But colors and rotation can only do so much, and the enemy still felt a bit boring. So we decided to look for inspiration in your comments instead.
Enemy suggestion: add a toy car. Maybe you could make a remote controlled car. Can you make this enemy? Mini car. Maybe a small RC car can be the new melee enemy. You should make an RC car. Make the new enemy a toy car, like a version of the football player. So yeah, after all these comments, it felt very obvious what kind of new enemy that we should add. So we added a tiny RC car and made it chase after Billy. When it's time for the car to charge, it briefly stops and then gets up on its back wheels before it quickly moves towards your location. It then hits the wall and gets disabled for a second before it can chase you again. The tiny car looks a lot cuter than our old boring spinner enemy. Plus, an RC car feels like a more natural toy to find in Billy's bedroom.
So, what other enemy have we added and then replaced?
Well, just like the book monster on the school level and the clapperboard on the movie studio level, we knew that we needed a very simple enemy who chases after Billy on the bedroom floor level. We tried to figure out what kind of enemy that would fit that same jumping motion, and finally decided to add a bouncing rubber ball as the new enemy. It sounded fun in theory, and the design turned out okay, I guess. But at the same time, it felt a bit weird that Billy would have nightmares about a tiny rubber ball. Even though we weren't super excited about the ball, we decided to just leave it in the game and move on to other more important stuff. A couple of months later, we got a comment from Joel, who suggested that we should add a crocodile dentist as an enemy, just like the book monster and clapperboard. And that idea is brilliant, yet so simple. We felt a bit stupid that we hadn't thought of that ourselves. I mean, can you believe that we actually added a bouncing ball as an enemy before a crocodile?
That's pretty embarrassing.
Anyway, Fabian began drawing our new crocodile dentist enemy, but in the first version, the crocodile looked like if Pepe the Frog had a stroke. So he changed the perspective a bit, and that made the crocodile look so much better. And by making the crocodile jump instead of walk, we could get that similar animation to the book monster and clapperboard. And just like those two, the crocodile is one of the weakest enemies in the game, since it doesn't shoot any projectiles and lacks any way of moving faster than its regular speed. Plus, it doesn't take many hits to kill either. And just like the RC car, the crocodile dentist enemy feels much more interesting than our old rubber ball. Now that you have seen these two enemies, you have actually seen all but one of our new enemies for the bedroom floor level, but I think we'll save the last enemy for another devlog.
Until then, we'd love to hear your feedback on our new toy car and crocodile enemies.
So, what do you think about our new enemies for Billy's Nightmare? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.